Hey everyone, I got to start over. My name's Tyla. I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict, and welcome to the Big Book Awakening workshop on Sundays at Old Town. We are on the second half of the doctor's opinion. I have a few things. The second half of Bill's story. I'm just not right yet. All of this first step work is just kicked my ass. I want to talk a minute about how many people here are doing the Big Book Awakening for the first time. Oh, it's so good. I saw your picture at the wedding. Oh, that was so good. How many people here, you never know what I'm going to say. How many people here are doing the Big Book Awakening for the first time, transcribing? Raise their hands high for the first time. Okay. Because this question is more to you than the rest of the people, because I know a lot of people that have done the work aren't transcribing a new book, but there are big book maniacs that transcribe a new book every time they do it. It is not me, but I do know them. I would like, this is important, I would like to do, especially Patty, I want you to tell me, I would like to do all of There Is a Solution next week. It is 12 pages. Now, and then the following week, I'd like to do all of more about alcoholism, and then we're really moving into it faster. Now, when this BBA started 15 years ago, almost 16 years ago, at the Gay and Lesbian Center downtown, we did all full chapters all the time. We went to half chapters when I started getting too many whiny babies in the group, and I had to kind of cater to them. It wasn't Richard. He was not one of them. He would go, whatever. So let me tell you how to do it. If I give you an idea of how to do it, maybe you could see you can do it. It's 12 pages. Who's calling me? Tell him I ain't home. Did it stop? Who's guilty? So it's 12 pages, and what you can do is you can do 2 pages a day. Monday 2, Wednesday 2, Monday 2, Tuesday 2, Wednesday 2, and then you can, that's the first half of There Is a Solution, and then you can read on Wednesday those, I'm seeing some funny faces, and then you can read those to your step partner on the phone. Then the next, you do 2, 2, and 2, and on Saturday you read them to your step partner on the phone. And that will cover all of There Is a Solution, and we can move faster. Now, and I want to hear what you have to say, Sarah, because you've done the work. So, one of the common things is I slowed this process down because people used to complain it was too fast. Now they complain it's too slow. And so I like to move a little faster. What do you guys...
Faster.
Who would be in favor? Well, I don't want to hear from anyone but the people that are doing the work the first time. Listen, I only want to hear from the people that are doing the work the first time. How many that are doing the work the first time are willing to go faster? Raise your hand. How many of those with their hands up were meth addicts? I'm crazy. Are you laughing? There's no heroin addicts that raise their hand. They're sleeping through that process like me. Okay, so how many people that have done the work are willing to do the whole chapter? Okay, now let me tell you that one of the things too is, when we do the whole chapter next week, I'll do the first half of There Is a Solution in a half an hour. We'll take maybe a little break. Joe will do the second half of There Is a Solution and in a half an hour, and then we'll have sharing. So we may go 10 minutes longer because of the break, but it's important kind of to have a break in there. But I think you're going to enjoy moving a little faster because, I sometimes feel I'm marinating in this first step. Okay. Is anyone that's not here today, if you have any friends in the workshop that aren't here today, would you please let them know that we're doing all of There Is a Solution next week? Okay? All right, so let's do the set-aside prayer, and we will get started on Bill's story. And I'm sorry we're running a few minutes late, so we will end a few minutes late. And I ask that people that are committed to this group do not leave after I share my experience, strength, and hope, because being here for the people in the discussion meeting is really important. Let's do the set-aside prayer. God, please enable me to set aside everything I think I know for an open mind and a new experience. Help me see the truth about the physical craving after I start to drink or use. Thank you. Meditation. Oh my God, I have someone on speaker. Jose was on the speaker. That is crappy. You should say how blessed he is. Okay, someone want to let the kids in that are at the front door? I'm old enough to say they're my kids, right, Tom? Does anybody have a watch on that I can borrow? Because I want to I have a lot to cover and I'm reading a lot and I can put a watch up here and stay more. Are you going to give me a time thing? That means I have to press it when I want to see it. I want it to be lit.
It's lit, baby. Okay. Just like you. In a good way.
I'm not really. Okay. So, will this go off or will it stay on?
It'll stay on.
The light will stay on? Okay, good.
You want it brighter?
Oh no, it's beautiful. Okay, is that Chantel back there?
Yeah.
Chanel. Yeah! Welcome, Chanel. So glad you're here. I'm so glad she came here today. Okay, well, we did this first half of Bill's story last week, and the important thing, you guys are here doing this workshop, not just for yourself, but so that you learn and get experience and knowledge, both, to be better sponsors. And so I'm going to give you, all through the work, I'm going to give you a lot of perspective on how I do it working with people. So the first half of Bill's story is going through writing all of my experience next to Bill's story, turning that into Tyla's story. So, because otherwise I don't have any similarities with this guy. He was a stockbroker, he was in the Army. He has nothing in common with me, but I am Bill W. When I get done with this, I'm just like him. In fact, I have so much in common with him. So Bill hit his bottom on page 8, and we're going to pick it up on page 9. And I'm going to read, that's why I want the clock, because I'm going to read the whole thing. As we do the whole chapter next week, we will not be able to read the whole thing. We're going to do the most important highlights of There Is a Solution. Is it okay? Rich? Okay, I just got to get your approval. Okay, because I really respect your opinion. Okay, page 9. Now, Ebby's coming to 12-step Bill. The bottom of page 8. My musing, he's getting drunk, by the way, and he's bad. I mean, how many people here drank gin? I mean, that is bad. Oh my God, I never knew so many people drank gin. Oh, I didn't know that. Did you start out drinking gin? No. Did you? Oh, from vodka to gin. You were... Richard, this is a whole nother level. Okay. My musing was interrupted. He's getting drunk. Bottom of page 8. My musing was interrupted by the telephone. The cheery voice of an old school friend asked if he might come over. He was sober. There's a promise. That's a promise. You might want to watch these promises. Does anyone have an extra highlighter in their back pocket? Do you have an extra?
I have an extra.
Can you let Richard have it?
I need it to be green.
Oh, he says his is green.
I have yellow and I have...
See, you guys that are listening on this, Richard is color coordinated. Richard.
Yellow and I have pink.
Why don't you switch with him? Give him the green one in your hand.
No green one in my hand.
Oh, I'm trying to... Peace settlement. Hey, go, Brian. Okay. He was sober, promise. It was years since I remember his coming to New York in that condition. I was amazed. Rumor had it that he had been committed for alcoholic sanity. I wondered how he had escaped. Of course he would have dinner, and then I could drink openly with him or smoke a little crack. Unmindful of his welfare, I thought only of recapturing the spirit of other days, living in the past. There was that time we had chartered an airplane to complete a jag. His coming over was an oasis in this dreary desert of futility. The very thing, an oasis. Drinkers are like that. Now, I got stories about Ebby. You guys want to laugh your ass off? Get online and look up Ebby Thatcher. This guy was a piece of work. He came from a very wealthy family. He was the black sheep of the family, and you can relate to that, right? He was the wild child of a very wealthy family. This jag that he's talking about in the airplane, Ebby had a very obsessive mind, if you can relate to that. And so Ebby used to get on these runs, these crazy ideas. And so Ebby gets on this crazy idea that he wants to hang out with pilots, right? So he starts hanging out at the airport, and after he got with Bill, he takes Bill over to the bar by the airport, right? And they hear that there's going to be this little airport opening, and they're going to when they opened an airport in those days, 1933, when they opened an airport, like they had the town band and the Girl Scouts, it was a big deal. I mean, that's what they did, and balloons. So Abby gets this great idea. And so there's this big, always the mail plane that carried the mail was the first plane that landed at the opening of these little airports. So Abby says, let's beat the mail plane there and let's open the airport ourselves. So they're all drunk. This is true. They find this pilot. They're all drinking, including the pilot. So they take off. They're all hammered, right? It's not that far, maybe an hour and a half, right? And they land, and the people are there, and they're waiting for the mail plane. And here comes Ebby and Bill and the pilot, and they land the plane, right? And no one gets out. And they go in to open the door of the plane, and Bill and Ebby fall out onto the pavement, drunk on their ass. That's one of Ebby's stories. There's lots of Ebby stories. Okay, I'll tell you some more. Okay, let me read a little, and then I'll tell you another one. That's Ebby and Bill. The door opened and he stood there, fresh-skinned and glowing. There's a promise. Promise 2. There was something about his eyes. Promise 3. He was inexplicably different. What had happened? I pushed a drink across the table. He refused it. Disappointed but curious, I wondered what had got into the fellow. He wasn't himself. Okay. Let me take it. Where would AA be? Who made the approach? Ebby or Bill?
Ebby.
Oh, he didn't just call him. Ebby called Bill, not Bill calling Ebby. Where would AA be if Ebby had waited till he was 24 hours sober or 30 days in the program or did a step a month? We wouldn't be here. And you hear it all the time. Oh, don't go 12-stepping anyone that's under the influence. I wouldn't be here because I was doing prostitution, smoking crack, and drinking vodka when I was 12-step, and it changed my life. Alex likes that. It's true, right? And that, if he hadn't taken what he felt guided in, thank you, baby, inside of who he is, the guy that did that and became my sponsor for 8 years, I wouldn't be here. So when we look at the story, we look at things, what are they trying to tell us in the story, that we can use in our own life, okay? Number 2. Do I believe if someone pushed a drink or a crack pipe across the table to me that I would have the power to refuse it? He refused it. Oh, Alex said no. See me after them. In the corner. Okay. I pushed a drink his way. Disappointed but curious. I'm sorry. Come, what's all this about? I queried. He looked straight at me, simply but smiling. He said, I've got religion. Bill is not a religious man. I was aghast. So that was it. Last summer, an alcoholic crackpot. That's what I was, a crackpot. I smoked crack and did pot. I just realized that. I'd never seen that before. The book's talking to me. I suspect a little cracked about religion. He had that starry-eyed look. There's a promise, starry-eyed look. Yes, the old boy was on fire, all right. There's promise 4, he was on fire. But bless his heart, let him rant. Besides, my gin would last longer than his preaching. But he did no ranting. In a matter-of-fact way, he told me about 2 men who had appeared in court. Those 2 men, there were really 3 men, can you imagine you're in court, you're going to get sentenced for being drunk in public, and a rolling hazard shows up. Rolling hazard is a rolling hazard, right? He shows up in zebra graves. So a grave and a hazard show up to save your ass, right? And they showed up in court because one of them had a connection with the judge, I think it was Roland Hazard, and got him off. And then he went to live with Roland Hazard, who was his sponsor, Ebby's sponsor, okay? But they did no ranting. In a matter-of-fact way, they told me that 2 men. They had told of a simple religious Oxford group idea and the practical program of action. That was 2 months ago, and the result was self-evident. It worked. The result was self-evident. It worked. There's promise 5. He had come to pass his experience along to me if I would have it. Okay. I cared to have it. If I cared to have it, I was shocked but interested. Certainly I was interested. I had to be, for I was hopeless. Okay. Do I see of myself on my own power, without God, or the AA recovery program? I am as hopeless as Bill. He talked for hours. I was 12-stepped in Pomona when I was doing prostitution and living in motels. It had been 2 years since I ever had an address. I mean, my life was awful. And I was working for this guy who was also one of my Johns, and he said to me, he kept telling me about this guy, I want you to talk to this guy. I got this guy that works for me, and he's a drug and alcohol counselor. Why won't you talk to him? I said, I ain't got time for no drug and alcohol counselor. My life was so bad. But I was scared. I had no idea what that meant. I never heard of a recovery program in my life. And finally, I agreed to talk to him. And that day that he came to talk to me, it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was living in a Howard Johnson's on Indian Hill Boulevard off the 10 freeway. And he came to talk to me, and like he walked in the room, he came up to, knocked on the window because there's sliding glass doors. He came into the room and he said, "Hi, my name's John, and I'm an addict and alcoholic, and I'd like to talk to you." And I said, "Man, you can talk to me, but I'm smoking crack and drinking vodka." Right? And he said to me, "It's okay. Smoke it up and drink it up, and just let me talk to you." And he sat there and talked to me for 2 hours. And it changed my life, even though I didn't know it at the time. And he let me smoke and drink. He never blinked an eye about it, What if he'd walked in and said, "You know what? Call me when you're 24 hours sober." I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have been able to I wasn't even interested in getting sober. So we need to think about that when we have a wet one to 12-step and not go alone, number one. He went alone because it was a man to a woman, but not to go alone, but to not also say we can't do it, okay? So he told me about his life, about God, about the 12 steps. And when he left after 2 hours, he handed me a piece of paper and he said, "When you get sick of dying, give me a call." And I was like, "Guy's really serious." I'm not that serious. But I did call him 3 months later behind a suicide attempt. And I'll tell you more about that. So he talked for hours in Bill's childhood memories of his grandfather. Bill was raised by his grandmother and his grandfather, not by his parents. His dad went to Canada. His mother was in college in New York. That wartime day in old Winchester Cathedral came back. Remember on page 1 in Bill's story, he's going to talk 2 more times. And remember I told you they don't really say what happened. When Bill was in, if you read the history, Pass It On, and Dr. Bob and all good old timers, they talk about Bill being in Winchester Cathedral and breaking down in tears and going outside because he had such a profound spiritual experience. So he says it again here. He remembers that, okay? I had always believed in a power greater than myself. I had often pondered these things. I was not an atheist. Few people really are, for that means blind faith in the strange proposition that this universe originated in a cipher and aimlessly rushes nowhere. My intellectual heroes, the chemists, the astronomers, even the evolutionists, suggest vast laws and forces at work. Despite contrary indications, I had little doubt that a mighty purpose and rhythm underlay all. How could there be so much precise immutable law and no intelligence? I simply had to believe in the spirit of the universe. He was willing to believe in an impersonal God who knew neither time nor limitation, but that was as far as I had gone. Okay. Have I always believed in a power greater than myself? Do I see that I have no choice but to believe in a spirit of the universe who knows neither time nor limitation? Is this as far as I've gone? With ministers and the world's religions, I parted right there. When they talked of a God personal to me, who was love, superhuman strength and direction, I became irritated, and my mind snapped shut against such a theory. So this personal God, these are the attributes of the personal God he's talking about. That personal God is love, superhuman strength, direction. Has my belief in an impersonal spirit given me the power to stop drinking forever? Or have I relapsed? Do I consider I may need a conception of God that is more personal to me? What is my attitude towards a personal God who is love, superhuman strength, and direction? Top of page 11. To Christ I conceded the certainty of a great man, not too closely followed by those who claimed him. His moral teaching most excellent. For myself, I had adopted those parts which seemed convenient and not too difficult. The rest I disregarded. And I'm not going to go into the Christ things about Christ with you on this, because I can do it on a personal basis with people one-on-one if they want to talk about it. It's really up to them. But the interesting thing is, he says he picked what was convenient and he let go of what wasn't convenient. I say to myself, is that the way I'm doing my AA program? Am I doing what's convenient? Oh, those 9-step demands ain't convenient. I ain't doing them, right? Oh, sponsorship. Oh, ain't convenient. I ain't doing it, right? I got to look at my own. Is that my attitude towards my program? So how does this fit into my life today? The wars which had been fought, the burnings and chicanery, the religious dispute have facilitated and made me sick. So now this paragraph here is going to show me that Bill is looking for a relationship with God and an understanding. Where is God looking? Where is Bill looking for his concept of God? Inside or outside?
Outside.
Outside. He's looking outside. He's looking at the war. He's looking at the problems in the religions. He's looking outside of himself to define this conception of God. Am I doing that? I honestly doubted whether, on balance, the religions of mankind had done any good. Judging from what I had seen in Europe and since, the power of God in human affairs was negligible. The brotherhood of man's a grim jest. If there was a devil, he seemed boss universal, and he certainly had me. Okay. Bill can't believe in a personal God, but he can believe in the devil. He says, wow. He believes in the devil. He's in trouble. And I remember looking in the mirror, if any of you guys can relate, when I was living in those motels, looking in the mirror and saying, I know you can relate, Greg. I have no idea what's living in my body. I look in the mirror at my eyes and know that there was not me living in me. I had no idea. It was so freaky. And I used to say to my friends, the few I had left, because I didn't want to share my crack, that that's what happens, right? You get less and less friends. Get rid of them. You know what I mean? You get poorer and poorer and more addicted, and pretty soon, because you don't want to share it. So, I used to tell a few friends I had, I need an exorcism. I really believe that, you guys. I mean, I'm seriously believed. I think that the devil was in me. So I get what Bill's saying, and he could feel that, because I was doing things that I hated myself for. That it wasn't me doing them. I mean, it wasn't me. I would tell my friends, I'm possessed. Yeah, Tyla, we know. Right? Okay. So he believes in the devil. Richard, you're going to love this. Okay, I'm going to read you something here. Yeah, Lynn?
Those questions you're reading are...
You can take pictures of them.
Oh, but they're in addition to anything else.
These questions are part of the new work that I've done with Dave Marquez's work. I said this, maybe some of you don't know that. Dave Marquez did a new workbook, and it is not out yet. And I was privy and kind enough, because I'm very close to him, that he gave me a copy of it. I've said this before. Have you guys heard me say this in the workshop? Yeah. I want you to know that I'm giving the credit, and this has taken me further. So I'm able to share some of this with you that I hope will move you deeper, even if you're not writing them down. But anyone can take pictures of my notes. Where's Carlos? Carlos, why are you so far back?
Come on, Carlos.
I want to see you. I love Carlos. He's our cake guy. Does he make great cake? Oh, my God. I tell everyone, you don't have a cake maker like us. You better come to BBA on cake night. Okay, I'm going to read you this. I know I'm a little crazy, but it'll keep your attention. Listen to this about Bill believing in the devil. Do I have trouble seeing the connection in the following terms, that all these terms are connected? Devil, I know Richard's going to love this, bedevilments, spiritual malady, spiritual sickness, ego, insanity, unmanageability, and untreated alcoholism. Okay. That's by the...
Tyla, sorry.
Yeah. I would be so happy to, but you can also take pictures of my notes. Okay. Okay. Do I have trouble seeing the connection in the following terms? Devil, bedevilments, spiritual malady, spiritually sick, ego, insanity, unmanageability, untreated alcoholism. Okay? Okay. But my friend sat before me and he made the point blank declaration that God had done for him what he could not do for himself. There's a promise. His human will had failed. Doctors had pronounced him incurable. Society was about to lock him up. Like myself, he had admitted complete defeat. Have I admitted complete defeat? I have admitted complete defeat, and I'm complete defeat every time I'm in a damn first step, because it is hard. You guys, do you find that sometimes it's a little depressing? Isn't it glad that we're on daylight savings time? Because it's lifted a little of my depression. Is that true? I mean, it's true for me. I'm sorry, lock up. Like myself, he admitted complete defeat. Then he had, in effect, been raised from the dead. Raised from the dead. That is powerful. I mean, you know when they say, like, alcoholic death, spiritual life, they mean you may not be dead in the ground. I mean, you might, but you're going to be spiritually dead. And people that have been around this program know what it's like to walk around being spiritually dead. And I'm not interested in that. I mean, I'd rather be anything than numb and dead. I want to read another question to you. Do I consider I may need a conception? I'm sorry, you guys. What did Abby and Bill admit? Complete defeat. How much personal power did Bill see that he and Abby had? Okay. Then he had, in effect, been raised from the dead. Another promise. Suddenly taken from a scrap heap to a level of life better than he had ever known. Another promise. Had this power originated in him? Obviously it had not. There had been no more power in him than there was in me, and at that minute, and that was none at all. That floored me. It began to look, oh my God, this is really hard for Bill. Began to look as though religious people were right. After all, right? Seeing Abby, that's what he saw. Here was something at work in the human heart which had done the impossible. There's a promise. My ideas about miracles were drastically revised right then. There's a promise. Never mind the musty past. Here sat a miracle directly across the kitchen table. He shouted great tidings. All those promises are the result of what he saw in Ebby. I saw that my friend was much more than inwardly reorganized. Here's some promises. He was on a different footing. His roots grasped a new soil. God consciousness. Despite the living example, so what kind of example was Abby to Bill? He was a living example. He was the real thing. He was what everyone needs that comes into this program. Someone that they can relate to, that they can see what has happened to them and they can experience it, not something distant. That's why they say it's so important that it's the same addiction, because it's very difficult for a heroin addict to be taking a heroin addict to be working with an alcoholic. Not that it's impossible. Sometimes there's a necessity if there's nothing else. But if they can work with a heroin addict, they'll be talking the same language. You know, because you know, sometimes I can't resist. You know, because you know what? When they get to that fifth step, and they do the take it to grave, and if you're an alcoholic, they go, wow, that's, when they share their take it, wow, that's a lot. Right? No, an alcoholic is sharing their fifth step with me, the take it to grave, and I go, wow, that's a lot. That was some tough stuff you did. Now, the heroin addict talks to me. You did what? With who? Where? Are you kidding? It's a little different. So it's good to be able to connect that way, right? Because, are you like, you're so crazy, Tyla. I know you're looking at it. I can't resist it because I've heard them all those things, and it is true, right? You did what? With who? Where? And you're still alive. Okay. Despite the living example of my friend, there remained in me the vestiges of an old prejudice. The word God still aroused a certain, and say that word? Antipathy. I always get twisted. When the thought was expressed that there might be a God personal to me, this feeling was intensified. I didn't like the idea it could go for such conceptions as, here's some of Bill's conceptions: creative intelligence, universal mind, or spirit of nature, but I resisted the thought of a czar of heavens, however loving its way may be. I have since talked with scores of men who felt the same way. Do I believe I can and will experience similar results from step 2 as Bill if I do what Bill did? This is now step 2. My friend suggested what then seemed a novel idea. He said, why don't you choose your own conception of God? Why don't I choose my own conception of God? This, I hate to tell you guys, this did not really come from Ebby. This was added by Bill. Ebby was a member of the Oxford group, and the Oxford group would never say that. But Bill was a salesman, and that idea did come into the big book, and Bill put it in here. And I think it's awesome that he did because it helps all of us, but it would have never come from Ebby. The Oxford group wouldn't say that. You mean that it's not... They did certain things here. Dave will be here in a month, and you can get it really down with Dave.
So this was a de novo idea from Bill?
This was an idea from Ebby. Ebby said to Bill, why don't you choose your own concept? But Ebby never said that.
Right.
Never. He was Oxford grouper. Oxford groups would have never said choose your own conception. There was a Christian fellowship. That was unheard of.
Bill's?
It was not, well, it was kind of really Sam Shoemaker's.
You're right.
And he was also an Oxford grouper, but there were different people accredited for doing it, but it certainly wasn't Ebby, and it didn't come at this time in the history of Alcoholics Anonymous. But this is where it shows up. Now, I looked this up because I was so interested. I didn't just say my own head, you know what I mean? I wanted to look up the history of this because it was so odd to me that they would put this here, that Ebby would ever say that. You know, because he'd been well indoctrinated in the Oxford group. I mean, he was living at the Calvary Mission with Sam Shoemaker, and he was a member of the business team of the Oxford group, you know, and with Bill and Shep and Roland Hazard, who, you know, went to see Carl Jung, or we're going to read about in There Is a Solution, right? So these were heavy Oxford groupers, and there was no way Roland Hazard was saying, pick your own conception of God. And I'd love if some of you check it out yourself and come back with some more info on it, see what you find out. And maybe I could be wrong. I doubt it.
He was also drunk at this point.
Oh, he's drunk on his ass.
So he may have been hearing some stuff.
But what I read about it, you know what I mean? It said that he kind of did that. On Agnostica, there's a site called Agnostica. It has a lot of history of AA. It's very good. Okay. That statement hit me hard. This is the results of that statement that he says to Bill. Why don't you pick your own conception of God? And such a beautiful statement that opened the door for so many of us to be in this program. This is the results. It melted the icy intellectual mountain in whose shadow I had lived and shivered many years. There's a promise. I stood in the sunlight at last. There's a promise. It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. And in step 2, the first proposition of step 2 is, am I willing to believe there is a power greater than myself? They're saying in here, they don't even say in step 2, and they're saying they're just saying, am I willing to believe there is? So they're just pushing a little bit further right here, in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. Here's a promise. I saw that growth could start from that point. Upon a foundation of complete willingness, I might build what I saw in my friend. Would I have it? Of course I would. Okay. Do I believe choosing my own conception of God will put me in the sunlight of the Spirit? Bill said he was in it. Do I trust that it's only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself? That nothing more of me is required to make a beginning with God? Do I believe growth can start from this point? Do I believe that what has been built in my sponsor and my AA friends may be built in me? Do I believe if I have a humble willingness to have God with me, he will come? Okay. Thus was I convinced that God is concerned with us humans when we want him enough. And that is also a promise. But challenge everything in the big book. You know, when you're newer in this program, you think that you have to, I don't think say you, but me. I would think that if I believed something different than what the big book said, I would think that I had to agree with the big book because something was wrong with the way I thought. And that is not true. You're not going to challenge everything that you hear that like speaks up to you. Like he says about I'm convinced that God is concerned with us humans when we want him enough. I think if you read the story of Paul in the Bible, I think that you're going to see that he was chased down by God. So I have problems with that because God came to me when I attempted suicide, and I never wanted him. I never was seeking God. And many of you sit here and God found you. Because I think he's always seeking his kids. And all the stuff that happened during our addiction out there and my addiction out there when I should be dead, what saved me? It wasn't me. Okay. The real significance of my experience, here it is again, in the cathedral burst upon me. For a brief moment, I had needed and wanted God. There had been a humble willingness to have him with me, and he came. But soon the sense of his presence had been blotted out by worldly clamors, mostly those within myself, and so it had been ever since, how blind I'd been to God's presence. Does worldly clamor block out the sense of God's presence? Worldly clamors within myself presently? Okay. There I humbly offered myself to God as, at the hospital I was separated from alcohol for the last time. Am I separated from alcohol and drugs for the last time? Yes. Are you guys? Who's not, stay after? And Richard and I will talk to you. Is this it? I was done. It isn't easy sometimes to get done. When I got here, I was done. Some people like to, scrape it along a little bit. But I believe that it was only by the grace of God that I was done. That was nothing of my doing. That was a gift that was within my heart. Treatment seemed wise, for I showed signs of delirium tremens. There I offered myself to God. Ebby's going to walk him through the steps, to do with me as he would. I placed myself unreservedly. And when I'm working with people, we're talking about reservations. Not only here, but we talk about them in more about alcoholism. There's a solution under his care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, that without him I was lost. I ruthlessly faced my sins are defects, and became willing to have my newfound friend God take them away root and branch. I have not had a drink since. Okay, there's lots of promise. There's a promise there. I've not had a drink since. There's a promise. Okay. I'll finish this up. My schoolmate visited me, and that's Abby, acquainted him with my problems and deficiencies. 8, 9, we made a list of people I'd hurt, toward whom I had resentment. I expressed my entire willingness to approach these individuals, admitting my wrong. Never was I to be critical of them. I was to write all such matters to the utmost of my ability. Okay. Those 12 steps that most of us think that Abby's giving him are the 6 steps of the Oxford group. They're not the 12 steps. They weren't even written, right? They say that, and I thought it too for such a long time, but until I, learned more about the history. So this is really the 6th step to turn into the 12 steps, because this was, 1934, 35? Yeah, 34, yeah. So this is the 6 steps of the Oxford group, which you can look up in your book. I think it's 263. Is that what it is? I don't know. Okay, it's in the book. Is it in Dr. Bob's Nightmare? Here. It's in, he sold himself short, 263. Let me just read it real quick. 1, complete deflation. 2, dependence and guidance from higher power. 3, moral inventory. 4, confession. 5, restitution. 6, continue to work with other alcoholics. Thank you so much. That's why Ebby was out chasing down Bill, because he had done these steps, and evangelizing and work with others was really a big part of the Oxford group. Okay. I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness within. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. There's a promise. So, common sense is when you weigh something right or wrong. When you're going to make a decision and you say, I'll list the positives and I'll list the negatives. That's kind of common sense, weighing the positives and the negatives. It's telling me common sense will become uncommon because I'm going to operate from intuition and inspiration, which is not common sense, and it doesn't make sense to a lot of people. That's why common sense will become uncommon sense. Okay? I was to step 11. Bill on this page only does up to step 11. I was to sit quietly when in doubt, asking only for direction, 1, promise, and strength to meet my problems as he would have me. Do we do that? You guys do that when in doubt? Never was I to pray for myself except as my request bore on the usefulness to others. Then only might I expect to receive, and that would be in great measure. Okay. My friend promised when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator. Promise. I would have the elements of a way of living which answered all my problems. All my problems. I think that's the most important word there. And they're going to say this on the bottom of page 42, and they're going to say it in the bottom of page 69 in sex inventory. They're going to tell us these times, this is going to answer all your problems. And I think that's an incredible claim, and I think that it meets it if we do the things they're asking us to do. Belief in the power of God plus enough willingness. I was wondering, do I believe I will have the elements of a way of living which answer all my problems? Am I willing to meet the essential requirements for this new life? Belief in God, willingness, honesty, and humility. Okay. Turn to page 14. To establish and maintain the new order of things. These are must requirements. When they say a new order of things, these are requirements. Were the essential requirements. And there's a promise there. To establish and maintain the new order of things. That's a promise. I'm just looking at my notes. So the promises here, there were a bunch of promises. I'm going to give them to you real quick on the previous page 13. I have not had a drink since. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator. 3. 4. I would have the elements of way of living which answered all my problems. Okay. We're on page 14. Simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. I put a $sign over price. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. We don't work on it. We don't work on self-centeredness. How do you work on it? It's destroyed. I must turn to all things to the Father of light who presides over us all. Do we work on self-centeredness, or is it destroyed? These were revolutionary and drastic proposals. Here are the 7 results of Bill going for this relationship with God. I fully accepted that. The moment I fully accepted him, promise 1. The effect was electric. Promise 2. There was a sense of victory, followed by such a peace. Promise 3. Serenity. Am I on 3? Let's see. I'm sorry, you guys. That 3 was serenity, and as I had ever known. There was an utter confidence. 4. I felt lifted up. 5. As though the great clean wind of a mountaintop blew through and through. God comes to most men gradually, but his impact on me was sudden and profound. You know, in the spiritual experience in the back of the book, they give us this explanation of the educational variety of spiritual experience or the immediate, like Bill's electric, like mine was electric, right? But I ask you to consider that they're all sudden and profound. And I'm going to read to you something about that, okay? Did God come to me gradually, or was his impact sudden and profound? Am I willing to consider that if I am a real alcoholic and drug addict with a craving beyond my mental control, once I start, that my sobriety date is a sudden and profound impact by God, even though I may not have realized it at the time? Do I see that just because I am seeing God's impact in me on my sobriety date, in hindsight, does not change the fact that the experience was both sudden and profound? For a moment I was alarmed and called my friend, the doctor, to ask if I was still sane. He listened in wonder as I talked. Finally he shook his head. Something has happened to you. That's Dr. Silkworth. Something has happened to you. By the way, when Bill entered Towns Hospital again, a couple pages earlier, that was time 4. That was his last time. He'd been there 4 times. But you had better hang on to it. Anything is better than the way you were. The good doctor now sees many men who have such experience. He knows that they are real. While I lay in the hospital, a thought came that there were thousands of hopeless alcoholics who might be glad to have what had been so freely given to me. Do I have that thought? That I would be helping other alcoholics and addicts with what has so freely been given to me? And I ask myself that question. Am I doing that? Perhaps I could help some of them. They in turn might work with others. My friend emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. Particularly was it imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Faith without works was dead. And that saying came from Anne, Dr. Bob's wife, when they used to sit in the morning and have their morning Bible study and prayer that they did before the big book was written. You know, Anne would be there and read from the Bible, and this was one of her favorite things. Faith without works is dead. And it's a great saying, and that's how it got into our book. Faith without works was dead, he said, and how appalling and true for the alcoholic and addict. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. So the book right there is telling me that it's not always going to be comfortable. There's going to be trials and low spots ahead. I'm going to read this. Hold on. Okay. Not ease and comfort. If he did not work, he would surely drink again, and if he drank, he would surely die. Then faith would be dead indeed. With us, it is just like that. Faith has to work through us 24 hours a day. My wife and I abandon ourselves with enthusiasm to the ideas of helping other alcoholics to a solution of their problems. It was fortunate for my old business associates remained skeptical for a year and a half, during which I found little work. I was not too well at the time, and I was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment. So, could Bill rely on his profession, finances, emotions, or feelings to keep him sober? What did Bill's false dependencies nearly do? What measures failed to keep Bill from taking a drink when all others failed? Let's see. I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with other, that's a promise. Work with another alcoholic would save the day. And it's going to tell us on page 89, the first page of working with others, that all other activities will fail, but working with others will never fail. And sometimes when you're having a hard time, it's the last thing you want to do. But having been around for a while, I can tell you it works when all other things don't. I would be on talking to a new man there. Many times I've gone to the old hospital in despair. On talking to a new man there, here's a promise, I would be amazingly lifted up and set on my feet. Here's another promise. It is a design for living that works in rough going. Here's another promise. You know, there's so many promises. Don't ever think they're just in the 9th step. You guys are going to be able to, they're beautiful all throughout this. Here's a promise. We commence to make many fast friends. I use this paragraph as a checklist in my life. Have I made many fast friends? Yes. Has a fellowship grown up around me in which it is a wonderful thing to feel a part of? Yes. It's also a promise. The joy of living we really have under pressure and difficulty. Have I had that? Sometimes it's a pain in the ass, and I don't always have the joy of living, but I have it more than I used to. I have seen hundreds of families set their feet in a path that really goes somewhere. There's a promise. Have I seen that? Yes, I have. I have seen here's another promise. The most impossible domestic situations righted, and I have seen that. Feuds and bitterness, here's another promise. Feuds and bitterness of all sorts wiped out. I've seen it. I have seen men come out of asylums and resume a vital place in the lives of their families and communities. Has that happened to me? Yes, it has. Business and professional men have regained their standing. There is scarcely any form of trouble and misery which has not been overcome. There's a promise. Okay. Do I believe I can have the joy of living even under pressure and difficulty? Do I believe there is scarcely any form of trouble that can't be overcome? There are 11 promises on that page. Okay, we're almost done. See how I'm doing? Oh, awesome. We meet frequently so the newcomers may find the fellowship they seek. Do I meet frequently and not leave meetings early when I'm there for the newcomer? Because let me tell you something. Those newcomers in the rooms don't hear anything you're saying just about, but they see what you're doing. Your behavior speaks louder than anything you can say. And when they watch you as someone with time get up and leave a meeting early or a workshop early, you're setting an example. And I have to live this. And you know, if anyone's sponsored by me, I am tough about getting to meetings early, right, John? And staying late. Because that's when some of the best fellowship happens. That's when you really get to meet the people. Okay. All these informal gatherings, one may often see from 50 to 200 persons. We are growing in numbers and power. There's a promise. An alcoholic or an addict in his cups is an unlovely creature. Our struggles with them are variously strenuous, comic, and tragic. One poor chap committed suicide in Bill's home. He could not or would not see our way of life. There is, however, here's a promise, a vast amount of fun about it all. Am I having any fun in recovery? I suppose some would be shocked at our seeming worldliness and levity, but just underneath there is a deadly earnestness. Faith has to work 24 hours a day in and through us, or we perish. Here's a promise. We have it. Most of us feel we need look no further for utopia. That was originally for heaven on earth, and they changed it to utopia. We have it with us right here and now. Do I feel that? Each day, my friends, simple talk in our kitchen multiplies. Here's a promise. Multiplies itself in a widening circle of peace on earth and goodwill to man. Bill W., co-founder of AA, died January 24th, 1971. That's it. Thank you, guys. I enjoyed myself. Okay, it's open for sharing. I have questions in the box. So who would like to share? Who's going to time? I need 3-minute timing for open sharing. Richard, do you want to time? 3 minutes. Thank you. Who'd like to share? Come on, participate in your workshop. Thank you. Here, you want to pick a question?
Yes.
Do you want to read it? You can. If you don't like it, you can pick another.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Natasha. I'm an alcoholic. Why don't I choose my own conception of God?
Mm-hmm.
What's the question?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Or have you?
Oh, have I? Let's see.
Share whatever you want.
My own conception of God. I guess what came up for me this time around was, I don't know. God, see, that's why I didn't get up here. I didn't know what I was going to say. My own conception of God. I guess this time I do have my own conception of God, but I hear a lot of people share about, like, what is the right conception of God. Like, I hear that a lot in program. And for me, I just, I have a perception of God that's pretty popular. And it is like, it's pretty much open. It's not, and I think whatever my conception of God is the right conception, is basically what I'm trying to say. It's like, even if I hear a lot of talk about this one, Jesus basically is like the right way, Christianity is the right way. I hear a lot of, prejudice, that's the way to go. And I just, when I work with people, or even for myself, like, whatever my perception of God is, that's the right one. That's the right one for me. And so that way I get to have a personal experience with this higher power, because if I don't have a personal experience with it, I'm not gonna survive, and because there are, like, low spots in trials throughout sobriety. I mean, they're really, really intense in the beginning, and, like, and if I pick up a drink, like, but there's going to be more in further in sobriety, but there's, like, a solution for each trial, like, every step of the way. And when stuff gets really difficult now, I do work with others, especially, like, relationships at home or not at home. I just work with others. That's just what I do. And then the other stuff works itself out. So it's not like I'm overcoming, things in my life, like self-willing it, or I'm, figuring stuff out. I'm not figuring anything out. I'm just pretty much working with others, and I'm coming to meetings and I'm doing my own step work. And then the other stuff gets figured out for me. And I have more clarity and a more conscious connection. So then uncommon sense is uncommon sense, yeah, that way. So that's all, thanks.
Come on.
You qualify, Brian.
Don't be funny. We'll support you.
You got me. Hi, everybody. I'm Brian, alcoholic, drug addict. This is Do I See Power in My Sponsor and AA Friends That Is Not Their Own? Ooh. Yes. Those who have tearing it up already. Those who have had an experience.
Especially when you were new. When you were new.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was something, being scared and terrified and walking in, and then there was this laughter, and there was this attraction, and I couldn't identify it at the time, but what it was peace and serenity. How could people be so calm, knowing the turmoil and the chaos and everything else that was going on in my life, and the self-hatred and the self-abuse, and these people had stories and experiences just like mine, but yet they weren't living in that pain and misery anymore, and then that was the power that had transformed them, that was really attracted and got me motivated to get involved in the work. So since we're in Bill's story, I just wanted to share a quick testimony. I get to New York every January, and I found this room by accident. I'm looking up a meeting, and I'm in Midtown, and it's this is close by, about 10 blocks away, and it's on 42nd Street. And I buzz in the room, and it's called the Al-Anon House, not to be confused with Al-Anon, but it was a meeting that Bill had helped start, and kept going back in the 1940s, and so that meeting is still in existence. They moved. I haven't found the new location, but it was such a warm, beautiful room, and Bill, the desk that Bill had donated is still sitting there, and then there's a baseball bat that looks like it was made in the 1940s, probably earlier, that hangs above the room, and it's called it's Bill's bat. It's called the Peacekeeper. So I'm sure things were a little bit crazy back then.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Oh yeah, you have the good one. Well, I don't want it to be one that would be more for someone that's been around longer. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Colin. I'm an alcoholic addict.
Hi, Colin.
Do I believe that if someone pushes a drink or drug across the table to me, I would have the power to refuse it? Honestly, right now, I would say definitely not. Just knowing myself and how I've been in the past, I don't think I would even really think about it. I would just take it.
This is your first time in the steps, right?
Yeah, this is the first time I've actually done any kind of work, so it seems to be working so far, so
You'll be able to in the future.
yeah, that's all I got.
Hi, Margaret. I'm an alcoholic. And I want to say a couple things before I look at my question. One was, I have to look at God from inside and not from outside, and God gives me power to live my life, and has squashed every problem I thought was dominant over me. And when I realize is God's dominant over all problems, there's a solution to every problem out there. And I also want to say, wow, isn't it amazing there's more than 6 promises or 12 promises? Because we have this book, everybody reads the promises at the end of all these meetings, but when we sit down and look at all these promises that are just handed over to us right and left, that when I first read the book, I kind of read it so fast because I didn't really want to read it. I was told, hey, you got to read 164 pages before I'll talk to you. I'm like, oh, okay, so yeah, I read it. But I never got a word. I never really got it. I had to keep coming back over and over and over again, and to realize there's so many promises that are just littered throughout the whole book that is there for me. All I need to do is want it. Am I willing to meet the essential requirements for this new life? Believing in God, willingness, honesty, and humility. I think humility was the hardest thing for me when I first came to the program. My attitude was like, I'll be goddamned if I'm going to stand up there and humiliate myself in front of all these people. Because I have worked so hard to build up my ego, my pride, because I didn't come from the prettiest house on the block. I lived in the sugar shack, and there's problems in the house that nobody talked about, and I grew up in a lot of shame. So it was like I had to build this ego to support myself, and I got very angry with God along the way. I had to learn how to forgive God and love God again. I won't get into that right now, but I had to find the willingness to open myself up, because I got to a point where I needed God. God doesn't need me, not really, but I sure do need God, and makes my life a lot better if God's in control and I'm not. So thank you.
Trying to push a few of you up here because I like to see different people share each week. Because I'm in charge till we get to page 62.
Uh-oh.
Hi, Corey. Want to read it in the mic?
Yeah, but I'm trying to see if I can read it.
Want me to read it for you?
Hi, my name is Corey, and I'm an alcoholic, and I like just a little bit of crystal meth.
Just a little. Who doesn't?
Do I see... Right, exactly. Yeah, read it for me.
Okay. Do I see that if I presently have a sobriety date, then it's very likely that God is doing for me what I cannot do for myself?
Wow.
Yeah, my sobriety date is 10/2, and if I forget, I have lots of friends that'll text me that weekly, and they'll say, "You're still sober? Is it still 10/2?" Yeah, if I believe that's true, because in the very beginning, it's got to be God's grace that keeps me sober, because left to my own devices, I always get high, and it had to be grace because, those first few days I didn't really have any tools. I'm leaning on my sponsor heavily, but, I haven't had a spiritual experience yet, which is supposed to come as a result of the 12 steps. So I had to be covered by grace. That's all I got.
Hi there, I'm Tom, alcoholic addict.
Hi, Tom.
Also never done crystal meth, so anybody else join me in that? Yeah, no crystal meth. I mean, it's like romanticizing, I don't know. Sorry, just my little thing. I want to talk about my anniversary day for a second, July 4th, 1986. But it was where my last drink that's most important, I think, in this conversation. Ebby Thatcher was his last name, and my last drink was in Thatcher Park.
Awesome.
I got sober in Albany, New York, and Ebby's dad, or was it granddad, was the governor of New York way, way, way back when. And so they named this park after him. It was like a 200-foot escarpment, which you guys would call a mesa around here. And he overlooked Albany, and we went up there July 4th to watch the fireworks. And I brought my cooler full of soda because I was going to be sober that day, right? I was a designated driver. Well, it didn't quite work out that way. I ended up getting drunk and driving home, and the girl behind me following us got in a car accident, and that began my journey of sobriety in Thatcher Park, which I never related the two in sobriety until I read the book EBT, which is written by one of our members. It's a pretty cool book. So anyways, do you understand you can choose your own conception of God, that it has to make sense? It only has to make sense for you. Yeah. I was about 9 months sober. I was born into a family that was Roman Catholic, and I was raised that way. And, I was afraid of God. I was afraid that he was going to strike me dead if I talked ill of him. I was just raised that way. But at the same time, we'd get home from church, and, I'd go out and play in the grass or whatever. I'd have grass stains on my knees, and I'd get, beaten by my dad, like right after church. And I couldn't figure out how this holy family with the church would also beat their children, So I had this terrible fear of God, and turning my will and my life over to that fearful being wasn't going to happen. It just wasn't. I was about 9 months sober, and I was so mad at God. And I was in this great canyon of a waterfall called Bash Bish Falls. It's like about a 60-foot waterfall. It bounces off the walls, and it was really loud. It was a springtime, lots of water, and I was screaming, "I fucking hate you, God! I fucking hate you! I fire you!" And I'm waiting for the lightning bolts, So now what, right? I fired the God of my early upbringing, and now what? I didn't have another concept. I had kind of a clean slate. And it was really like that dividing line in my sobriety where, what do I trust? What do I believe in? What can I feel like a connection with? And for me at first it was nature and, sunsets and mountainsides, and it was the beginning of this journey of a spiritual life. And it only happened because I was able to swear at God and live through it, I guess. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Cara. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Cara.
Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Tyla. I'm so excited to be able to be a part of this. This has changed my whole world. Tyla took me through for alcohol, and then I'm going through right now for food. And my whole relationship with my dad, which I did not have, it's like amazing. It's a miracle. I never even thought. I mean, we went for a walk together. Like, that's wouldn't have happened with my dad. He was Catholic, and he was abused and put up for adoption and then taken back, and he was very abusive, an alcoholic. So I had a lot of pain. Anyways, thank you. Am I willing to believe that my view of having any personal power at all is an illusion? So this was a good one for me because I still think I have power. And I still try really hard to do things and pray really hard that it goes my way, and try to set up all the steps that can make it happen, and then I just worry and stress and freak out that it's not going to happen. And when I realize that God's doing everything for me, I don't have to stress as much. I probably wouldn't have as many wrinkles, so I wouldn't have to pay so much for Botox. If I would just meditate and relax, everything goes exactly as it's supposed to go. Actually, it goes better than I could have even imagined, because God is all power. So this was perfect for me. Thanks.
I love you. Who hasn't shared here yet? You want that one? Is that good?
No, let me know the one. Here you go.
Hi, I'm Maria. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Maria.
Am I willing to admit without God I am lost? There was a while that I didn't even know there was a God. I was growing up as a Catholic also. But I believed when I was growing up that everything my parents were saying to me were true, were right, so how could there be a God, right? But I grew up in a really abusive family, abusive home, dysfunctional, very dysfunctional. So I believe they were my higher power for some reason. Everything that they said to me, I was a little girl, how could I not know, you know? But today I know I'm lost without him for sure. I can't imagine my life without even a day without thinking about him, talking to him. I walk through life today just all day long, just asking God to forgive me for the little things that I do, the big things that I do. I always walk around like a nut. Sometimes I think I'm crazy because I like talk in my head sometimes. I'm like, are you hearing me? Like, what? Am I doing this right? Am I supposed to be doing this? Like, I'm talking to him all day long. And I don't think I'm crazy anymore. I just think I believe what I believe today. And he is my higher power. Yes, I would be definitely, the life he's given me today, it's amazing. I was almost in my death many times. I coded in front of my son. My daughter picked me up in a bar when I passed out, and the bartender had to call her to pick me up. I almost died because I wanted to commit suicide, sleeping in my car in -2 weather in Philadelphia. I'm from Philly, by the way. Go Eagles. I was at the river of Delaware River, ready to plunge into the river, and that was my last run before, I came out here to California. So, and if it wasn't for God, I asked him at that moment, I had lost all faith in him. And that moment I was in a car, I remember saying to myself and praying, I called out for him for that reason. I knew I was going to die. I was going to die. I was that lost. And I prayed for him, and I was like, God, tell me what to do, because all I had to do was take my foot off the brake, and I was going to go right into the river. And my brother calls me at that very moment and says, there's a place that the AAC is going to take you in California. Go stay with your cousin, and you got 2 days, and you got to pack and go. And that was my sign. And then I knew he was there and he was listening to me. So I'd be definitely lost without him. That's all I got.
That's beautiful. That was great. Good time for let's see, one more. Hi.
Did you want to?
Hi, my name is Nicole, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Nicole.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Okay. So my question says, does worldly clamors block out the sense and the sense of God's presence, worldly clamors within myself now presently? What does worldly clamors mean?
Being more concerned about money, profession, making it in life, getting ahead, how big my house will be, what the couch will look like.
So, does worldly clamors block out the sense of, so for me, when I feel that I'm connected with God, that stuff doesn't worry me, because I know that I'm in good hands and that I know that I'm going to be taken care of. And so how I know that I'm not spiritually fit, which I love that you said, do you see this in common, the devil and the unspiritually fit? And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. Because when I'm not spiritually fit, my job bothers me, my bills bother me, my house isn't big enough, my car isn't luxurious enough. Yeah, my clothes aren't good enough, my appearance isn't good enough, everything. And it, you know what? It doesn't matter if I just bought that car. It doesn't matter if I just bought my clothes. I'm not going to feel good in it anymore. And when I'm just reliant on God, I know that my car can break down tomorrow and I will be okay. And so that's how that's how I can tell where am I at today. If those little things are bothering me, or if other people are bothering me, it's not them, it's not my car, it's not that stuff that's bothering me. It's because I'm losing sight of the big picture here, which is God. And when I found out that I can have a relationship with Him, I was blown away. That is the depth and weight I've been looking for my whole life. Because I just wanted a sense of belonging. I just wanted a sense of just being loved unconditionally, because I never saw that with my family. And when I found out that God no longer had to be up here, that He was literally like my friend, He was with me down here, it changed my entire life. And so that's all I have. Thanks.
We're going to wrap it up. We're going to wrap this up and do the serenity prayer, but I have a couple things I want to tell you about next week. Next week, we're going to do There's a Solution. I hope someone will get the baskets and pass the baskets. I want to thank the people that brought snacks. You guys are just awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it. Next week, you'll be looking at the end of the physical craving. Am I a real alcoholic or addict? Am I a hard drinker, hard user, or am I moderate? Yeah, none of you are moderate, I'm sure, but I want to ask you also next week, look at that when you're reading it, when it says alcohol, if you're just a meth addict, you just write meth over everywhere it says alcohol. Okay, you make the book talk to you. Please consider that this week that you consider that you're committed to this workshop and committed to staying until the end each time of the open sharing, that you are really a part of the group. And if you're not, then I would consider not coming. But consider that you're in or you're out. Okay, any questions? Hi, Lynn. Yes, tell us what those are. Shh, listen. Awesome. Leave them up there because we'll put them on Wednesday night also. Yeah, Don?
I just want to clarify. So this coming week is assignment 5, where we'll be putting into the book There is a Solution.
The whole thing. So there's 5 and 6 both.
Okay, 5 and 6.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Any other questions? Okay, let's pray out. The basket's going around, so I'm going to wait till it goes around. Please consider a $2 donation. We do pay rent. Thank you so much. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. If anyone doesn't have a step partner, see me after the group. And here are the phones. Natasha, thank you, phone people.
Thank
Will
you.
Resend it to Lynn?